Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Entertainment Headquarters, and welcome to another episode of Education. It is my segment on the channel that is dedicated to a subject that I don't have much knowledge of within the world of entertainment and pop culture. And one thing that everybody knows when it comes to Entertainment Headquarters, we talk a lot about film and television, different genres, different subjects, different kind of films, from horror to action to science fiction. And one thing when it comes to those kind of films that comes along is visual effects, because visual effects are heavy in those type of movies. Takes a lot to get, say, for example, a Mission Impossible film off the ground and make it look spectacular. With a horror movie, you need amazing gore effects. Or if you want what I call an event movie, something that kind of changes the landscape in terms of special effects, the likes of Jurassic Park, Lord of the Rings, all of that kind of stuff. But we need to go right back to where it all began. And the person I have selected to help me talk about or to educate me on their knowledge on special effects is my good friend, Mr. Jedi Grand Velle.
Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm hoping I won't bore too many people watching this or yourself, but it's kind of well, I'm trying to say the words is very, like,
Yeah,
yes, you know what I'm trying to say.
yeah.
Now, it's something that I've had this notion or this love for this kind of subject since, oh my God, I think since I was so this discovery of special effects and the behind the scenes and all that stuff it's just been there, and I mean, I guess that just shows how geeky I am, because the simple fact is this is something that you don't see around, at least in my part of the world, that many people are interested in. I mean, people are interested in sports, people are interested in certain other aspects of anything. My expertise in terms of what I love is the behind the scenes stuff,
Mm-hmm.
how things are done, whether it be television, movies, or even radio, and
Mm-hmm.
I I'm just someone who just loves that kind of subject, and I don't know why. I just took it to like a duck to water for some reason, and ever
There's
since.
nothing bad about that, my friend. Being a geek is the cool these days. Remember years and years ago, anybody who read a comic book or enjoyed cartoons as an adult was seen as a geek or a freak or weird. What's the number one films at the box office? Marvel,
Marvel.
DC, comic books are all the range. So guess what? We won.
Pretty much. I mean, it's like nerds and nerds unite, come
Yes,
together, kind of like thing.
yes,
And that's kind of the
yes,
thing right there, I mean, the
yes.
fact that, yeah, it's like whatever I was belittled by turned out to be the biggest thing that is pretty much on the scene with the Hollywood and entertainment in general. It's just like, and like I say, I've been at the heart of it since its inception, or at least when I came into interest of it. And like I say, this is way back in the mid '70s. I mean, I was a little tyke. I mean, go figure that was be something at the time that I would be taking an interest in. But as it shows, that is how much I was moved by it. So
Yes. And joining us as well, Mr. Jedi Grand Velle, watching us right now, is a good friend of ours, Mr. Jake
yes,
Hall.
Mr. Jake, how you feeling, sir?
Thank you for joining us. Well, like I say, you're here to tell me all you know, so I'm ready when you are. Let me know where you would like to begin. Or before we begin,
Mm-hmm.
let me just play a little tribute video to special effects to show the audience
Let's do that.
kind of what we're talking about, and then you can fill in the gaps. So
Mm-hmm.
here we go. So this has shown you this
Mm.
video. It's going to take a right back
Yes,
to
that okay. See, right?
effects,
Yes.
to when special effects.
Now, right there is exactly what I was thinking about earlier with the yes. Special effects deals with
So
motion.
yes.
See,
So
and so
this is
what?
way back.
Yes, and I'm glad. Again, that's the thing I think you have to do. You got to go back to when things were at a simpler time and how things were brought together. Yes. See this now. I'm geeking out right now looking at this, and this is the reason why I say you have to go in reverse before you can go forward. And the
Yes.
first shot that you see was with this horse, this man on a horse riding. Believe it or not, that is literally the first sense of visual effects that you can take in consideration, because the simple fact is, as I said before, when it comes to visual effects or special effects, it's all about what is being moved, what is being captured, and that was in itself was that particular special effect. And right here, we're seeing multitudes of different, like I said, I'm looking at
Yes.
this, and I can go back forward and tell you,
Yes.
but I mean,
And this is
I
this is showing like the progression of visual effects as time has gone by.
yes, and that's what I love about that, knowing that the technology has changed over time, but the standard is still the same. It's all about telling a story, or in fact, better yet, infecting the story with something that it would carry you to give you a more ideal about how the story is being take place and how it's being done and what's being talked about. And see, this is
Yes.
yes. See, this is oh my goodness. Yes. See, I can go. Yeah. See, this. The great thing about this is knowing that you can't get today's effects without going back to what traditional effects were really about. And if you don't do that, you can't go forward. It's impossible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more.
Yes.
And there you go, and it's taking all right back to the beginning.
So let's go to the beginning. Like I
Let's
mentioned,
begin.
that first shot that you showed, or this video showed, was the a man riding on a horse, and that was done just a simple, photo taken, frame by frame. And then when you put them together, you create the motion. You create that illusion. Because you got to remember, special effects are nothing more than dealing with illusion. It's a magician's trick. It's to show you something that can trick the eye, and the eye will believe in what you're seeing. I mean, the eye, like I say, we can we can denounce anything that we see and say that, I mean, whatever the eye sees, the mind will believe.
Mm-hmm.
And granted that the mind is a very strong tool in itself, the magician's trick is to say, how can we trick the mind, not necessarily the eye, but how can you trick the mind to believing that that is very real? That is actually what's happening on the screen and what's being taken place. So that first shot, that first beginning of the video where it shows the man on the horse,
Yeah.
nothing more than pictures, just frame by frame by frame by frame, taken, showing this particular movement or just a moment being
Mm-hmm.
taken and then spliced together like we do
Mm-hmm.
today, splice certain videos or whatever to create motion, to create the effect, because that's an effect in itself, the motion. So when you see that, it's like, wow, we're actually seeing something that's never been caught on whatever done. Seeing something that's just a man on a horse riding, and it's just a few simple frames. It's simple, very, very distinguished,
Mm-hmm.
but it's effective. And once you get past that particular moment, you people think it's like, well, where can we go from this particular point in time? It's like, I mean, can we go like even further than that? I mean, The mind, like I say, the mind, whatever the mind creates, whatever the mind thinks of, someone will create. They will make it into reality. And that's what you want to try to do. You want to make reality something that people can say, okay, we see it, but do we kind of believe it? And do we have a sense of, awareness that this is possible? Well, go forward a few years, the motion cap. I mean, when I say motion capture, it's not even motion capture. It's just film. Film was being developed. Motion picture film was being developed, and it was in its stages of development. And it was still kind of like anything that you make new. It's very rusty. It's not exactly 100%. It got to work out the kinks. So, some years later, I say about it was the late 1800s. The motion of someone capturing a train, steam engine train, coming towards camera. Now, you might have seen this before. It's like in its haste, in its infancy. I'm using words that I'm not trying to get, but I'm trying to say in its infancy. That's what I'm trying to say. In its infancy, it's a train coming towards camera. And this was shown to audiences, it's just something that they use, to capture people's imagination, to show that, you can capture certain things on and put them and solidify them on, for viewing.
Yeah.
It's just a simple train coming towards camera, and people in the audience was just like, oh, is this coming right straight at us? This is way before 3D. Remember this is way before 3D. We'll get into that. This is way before 3D, but it was coming right at the camera, and it's like, oh no, it's like, but it didn't, it didn't do anything. It just came towards camera and it went past and whatever, And this was a little idea that they created back then, where I don't know if you ever heard these things, Nickelodeons. I mean, yeah, Nickelodeons. That's what they're called. There are just these little, like, kind of machine-driven. I want to say machine-driven. There were motion captured machines which shows moving pictures for people to see. You pay like maybe a nickel or a dime or whatever back then, and you just looking through them like a telescope and everything, and look and see these things happening through motion.
And is that where you would turn them and you would see the images?
Exactly. And they were called. And this is the thing about that. You hear this name Nickelodeon, you automatically think, oh, this is the kids channel. That's it. But that's what they were.
Yeah, but think about it. That makes perfect sense, because you've got this thing that was invented years ago as a form of entertainment. You put your nickel in and you're watching the moving images. So you're basically, whether it's live action or animated, you're watching like a sequence that's been put together. Right. So the children's channel and, Nickelodeon started off as like a children's channel that only had animated cartoons. So that, might have been inspired by that device.
Yes.
And then later on, of course, they did eventually start doing live action shows and all of that. But its inspiration could have come from that device, to name the channel after something that was basically a stop motion device that delivered entertainment.
Yes. And that's the whole point. It's all about entertaining the individuals who are watching this, and it's great to know that from that, it's almost like the I don't want to say it, but I mean, I'm going to have to, because that's the best way to describe it. It's almost like a, what you call it, elevate, not elevation,
elevated.
I just had it on the tip of my tongue. Evolution. That's what I'm trying to say. Evolution of the first step, and first of talk about snapping pictures, capturing it on a single frame, then goes to the motion, which is putting the frames of different snapshots together to make motion. Then just put them on, catching it on film, which gets it going and showing the pictures of whatever, doing that. Well, each one of these leads to another, then to another, and to another. And at this time, people weren't just, doing cellular, capture of, capture things on film. Someone got the idea, well, can we capture something as far as say, let's do all just pretty much cartoons, animation on that cell, on that cellular level, because that's what cartoons are in itself. Nothing more than frame by frame by frame drawings put together to capture the motion of certain things that the artist is drawing. Like if you've ever heard of, I'm thinking it's that it was the first like animation that they did. It was called. It was dealing with a dinosaur. I think it's like Gentry or John. I can't remember the exact name, but it was the first time using animation in a motion term picture, where it shows this dinosaur basically coming out, walking around. But the thing about this is that at this time when this is made back way like early 90, 1900, when I say 1900, 20th century, it showed this dinosaur, doing these things, mundane things like sipping water, eating a tree, or throwing this mammoth into the sea or whatever. And the funny thing is, I mentioned before 3D, but like I said, we'll get to that. There was this interaction where someone on stage, a live action stage, was looking at the film and interacting with this particular, dinosaur that was all animated. So someone, and I think that's the thing about that. Some people can be ahead of their time in terms of what they do with visual effects in their mindset, but someone may not take to people like that really quick. They might say like, oh, I don't think that's going to even catch on. It's not going to even, make a dent in the world. Little did they know, because years later, there would be so many things that where you could be on stage, and, you could be in the audience, and they have this kind of interaction with what's on the screen and whatever, but moving on from that, time progressed, and then you have people like Walt Disney who would manufacture his mouse, as I like to say, Mickey, and he creates Steamboat
Willie.
Mickey. I think it's what it was called.
I think it was either Steamboat Willie or Steamboat Mickey.
Something like that's what I'm thinking. Steamboat Willie. I can't remember the name. I can't even pick it off the top of my head, but you get what I'm talking about. It's that motion that he took with just regular motion picture and say, I'm going to create where I can just do motion with animation and create these, these moving pictures of cartoons. And it worked, because that particular video, when I say video, that particular film or short came out way before Disney, create the mammoth that is Walt Disney, So it had to, like I say, it had to start there, had to start with that. And his particular ideas of things grew, but along the way, other people were doing different things, as far as bringing effects to light to bring and make a story. When I say make a story, enhance the story that you're watching, because that's what special effects are meant to do. They're meant to enhance the story, or at least do things that they can't do, in the physical world, or at least do it where they it happened before, but how can we recreate these things? Like,
and he not the first? I don't know if he was, but you'll know. Was he not the first ever film creator who put live action actors with the animated cartoon characters on screen?
Surprisingly, he was the innovator with that. Believe it or not, the first time you had the interaction with cartoons with live action people was a film which is very controversial, unfortunately, but is still a staple in human viewing, which is
that is Guess Song of the South.
That is it. Yes, sir. You see, you know your history, sir. See, you know a little bit more you might think you do. That was the first interaction with animation way before. And I'm pretty sure some of our generation and others think, oh, well, that was what Who Framed Roger Rabbit. No, Who Framed Roger Rabbit was just a step, was a just a what you call, how can I say, tenfold of what Song of the South was.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first iteration of animation and live action. But the thing about that is, it came at the tail end of that film. It wasn't like all in the middle of the film.
Yeah.
We got to remember, the film is dealing with, after the Civil War and how, dealing with slavery and everything and how their interactions, but it's dealing with a young man. I mean, when I say young boy who's dealing with the fact that his parents are, separated, and he wants his father there, but not just his mom. And the man, not the slave boy, but the black individual, he teaches this individual through song and story and whatnot. And you see the animated moments in the film and whatnot. And it's all about that. It's all about, you think, like I say, you think that you're watching the film. It's like, oh, the kids are going to watch this, and it's like, it's all about the animation and everything. No, we have to remind ourselves that what they're doing is they're telling the story about what the interaction is, or how a person in the film is dealing with the hardships of, what the parents are dealing with, and everything. And see, you got to remember, special effects in itself, because I've kind of mentioned this before, special effects are not meant to be the spectacle that it is. I mean, yes, they are spectacle, they are spectacular, but the thing about that is that they're not there to give the eye your whole attention. It's supposed to be there to say, let's do something that will enhance the story, to give you more balance in what you're talking about. Because like I was saying before, the Song of the South, you had things where you had, like, say, models, model photography, matte paintings and everything, like the telling. And this is the thing right here in the video, in the short, we saw something dealing with, in fact, they did it twice, where it shows the part of the Red Sea from the Ten Commandments.
Yes.
Now and this is funny. Cecil B. DeMille did this twice. He did a version of it in black and white, where it was a silent film, and we see the part of the Red Sea. The thing about that is that at the time when he did it the first time, when we see the parted Red Sea, that is actually a funky version of the sea being parted, and the size of the where the water is held back and everything. Believe it or not, that was actually this is why I say you have to use the tools that were available to you at the time. They were basically Jello molds, very large Jello molds with water or something like that going across them and everything. But then it was composited or rotoscoped into the scene of people walking on this dry path, whatever it was, in its whatever, walking through there and everything. And rotoscoping is nothing more than just cutting and pasting. That's all it is. And compositing. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, which you have sent me an image from another much loved classic that used that effect, cutting and pasting, and that was this particular film.
This is a great example of copy and pasting, but also the use of matte paintings. That's a subject all in itself, but I mean, it's definitely falls in line with this, where you can see right here the live action part where the characters of Dorothy, the Lion, the Tin Man and Scarecrow, they're walking on just a certain path to a certain degree of how far they go to, and you see the matte painting where it shows the Emerald City in the distance. Put them together, and the final shot is what you see. The composited shot is that. You see, that is what is all about when it comes to special effects. It's all about pacing and taking little bits of information and putting them together, and hopefully that what you see in the final result is believable to the eye. Because again, as I said before, this is all a magician's trick. We know about how magicians, do the trick where they pop a feather out of their hat, or a rabbit out of their hat, or something like that, or make a dove come out of nowhere. Well, this is the same process here. They do this they'll trick the eye into believing what you're being seen. And I can say forthcoming, when I saw The Wizard of Oz the first time, of course, I was a little kid. But as a kid, that's the thing about visual effects. It's most things will look real to a child. And that's because the brain hasn't really developed as sharply as it does as it gets older. Because once it gets older, it'll start to see more detail. It'll start to see more, something kind of off. It's not all there, and I can totally say for myself, as time progresses with films, when they do them and how they're portrayed and whatnot, it's amazing how my brain thinks that this stuff is real, because that shows that the people who do the effects, learn from the people before and take it upon themselves to, generate something that even bypass what they learned. Because that's the thing about anything in this world, in this universe, is that learn from the stepping block, but then kind of break that block and then say, okay, how can we improve this? And it's kind of weird how things like that manifest itself into something much more, fluently and brilliantly and more believable to the eye. And I'm going to mention something now that I think needs to be talked about. It's a good example. You know what stop motion is? I don't know if you know that that is or not. Okay, stop motion. Okay, we've seen this time and time again. We've seen stop motion in so many things, starting from the little British film called The Lost World, where we see this brontosaurus being captured, walking through London, and going back home and everything. We see this transcend into Willis O'Brien's basic effect, dealing with King Kong, which was nothing more than a stop motion puppet, on a either a miniature set, or he was composited into the setting behind him, or into a matte painting or anything like that.
You've got Ray Harryhausen kind
you
of.
Got Ray, and that's another brilliant individual, Ray Harryhausen. He was something who was under Willis O'Brien's tutelage. He was kind of like a learner from him. Like him, not Willis O'Brien, but Harryhausen pretty much took what he learned from Willis O'Brien and made it itself what he learned from him, and just like amplified it. That's kind of the good thing about learning from somebody who knows these things, who started it out, learning from that and taking what they learned and just kind of gravitated to something much more, much greater, much, emphasis. And we see that, Willis O'Brien, he did pretty much, a lot. I mean, he worked on the Giant Behemoth, he did that, and various other films. But the thing about that is, we know who Willis O'Brien is, but for some reason, his entourage, which was Harryhausen, seemed like he got much more clout. And that's not what he was trying to do. He wasn't trying to get much clout. He was just trying to do effects that were just like mind-blowing. Like when he did Jason and the Argonauts, he did Clash of the Titans. He did, I think was it Jason? No, not Jason, but trying to say Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger. He's done so many things in the past that, just almost kind of shadowed O'Brien's technique. But the thing about it is, he made it his own. And another good example, I'm gonna get back on that subject there. Another example of a person who takes something that they learn from their so-called, sensei is E.G. Tsuburaya. he was somebody who really, took effects, Japanese effects, and
Yeah.
really just pioneered it to the nth degree. But his understudy, I'm trying to say his name, Terashino Nakano. I'm just saying Mr. Nakano. He was under a Subaraya, and when Subaraya did pass away, he learned a great deal from him. But he took what he learned from him, and as I said again, he really expanded on what he learned. I mean, took the miniature photography, either motion, and this is a good example here. I just put this out. This is a miniature set of Mirror's Tenth from Return of the King for the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Peter
Yeah.
Jackson's film.
Yeah.
That's an
Some of
example
my
of,
favorite films.
yes, mine too. And let me just say that I got to coin this because this is something that he coined when it came to building these miniatures. They're called bigatures. And the thing about this is bigatures have been around way before that term was even put in the process. Bigatures are nothing more than big ass miniature sets or models or whatever, and photograph to give a better realism of what you're capturing on film. And like I say, these guys, and these guys are from Weta Workshop, who built that.
Weta Workshop, yeah, which is Peter Jackson's company.
Yes, I mean, like I say, like I say, Mr. Nakano took those thought process of miniature photography, all that stuff, and like I say, he just ran with it until he retired in '87. And it's just amazing that the techniques that you learn from one person and take it up on yourself and just amplify it. That's the thing that most people who do effects, they learn from someone else and just like say bit by bit by bit by bit by bit, take it another step to make it even better. Now, I wish I had shared this with you earlier, but this is an example of what I was talking about. Taking something that is there, but kind of like say upgrading it, which was stop motion. We go to a film like Dragon Slayer. Dragon Slayer
Yes.
is a perfect example of what you can use to make something that's even more fluent than what you had before. I mean, true enough, the people who did Dragon Slayer, and as I mentioned before, this company made did the effects for it.
I
Um, yes, they had did Star Wars, and previously they did a year before The Empire Strike Back, where they used stop motion in that picture, and it's in a way it was pretty seamless because it worked for the Imperial Walkers, because they're lumbering over you know like elephants, just big, big clumsily animals and everything. But Dragon Slayer would take it one step further. The technique was called go motion, and go motion was nothing more than a simple fact of what is called go motion. We mentioned motion before, which is nothing more than a frame by frame by frame of motion, showing how things work, to make it seem fluent. Go motion is nothing more than moving a puppet through the camera itself in real time. So when you hear stop motion, it's like, okay, you got to take a frame of it, move it a little bit, snip, move it a little bit, snip. That's what stop motion is. Go motion alleviates all that. What you're basically doing is moving the puppet um, slowly, but the eye of the camera is open and films it in it's kind of slow down, but when it's replayed in real time, it looks like it looks fast, it looks fluent, it doesn't have no sense of kinks in it. Because if you anybody who's seen anything done stop motion, you can tell the jerkiness, you can tell the like kind of like it's like yeah, it's kind of off, but we kind of like that. It has its own character when you see that kind of stuff. We see that. With go motion, you have none of that. And I, for one, when I saw Dragon Slayer, I was like 12 years old. I was kind of thinking like, this is a very realistic dragon. I mean, true enough, they use close-up versions of it with puppets and everything to give it, more realism and everything. But when you see it from a distance, you're kind of like, why is it moving so smoothly? Why is it moving like there's no hesitation, no kind of because like I say, at the time I knew about stop motion at this time, but I was kind of like, why does it feel so fluid? Why does it feel and I want to say I'm only 12 years old when seeing this, and I was kind of like, I didn't know what the technique was at the time, so I didn't understand how this was being done until years later. And go motion was nothing more than a technique that enhances what you want in order to make more fluent visuals of puppets or anything that's on camera. Now, granted, I mentioned Super Rai before, and he kind of used stop motion in some sense, but his more greatest feat was suitmation, which we all know what that is. That's basically a man in a suit and performing the techniques of a creature that he's supposed to do, or even she, which nowadays sometimes is, do the effects on a miniature set and pretty much tear down or blow up or whatever on the set that you're doing. And we all know the king of suitmation was Harold Nakajima, rest in peace. He was the first person to don the Godzilla suit, and he played that character well into his 40s. And like I say, it was a technique that was so embellished in the human mind that even at the time when I first saw at least saw my first Godzilla film, I was kind of like, say, wow, they're doing some incredible motion here. That, I mean, in a sense, I didn't realize it was a man in a suit at the time, because like I say, when I first saw my first Godzilla film, I was like 6 years old. I didn't
same
know
age as me. Yeah.
So the simple fact is that it's all about balancing things out in terms of how are you tricking the eye to believe what you see on the screen. And it's amazing how something like those things tend to just run with that, because like I say, you learn from the technique to do this, you learn from the technique to do that, but in time you realize that somewhere along the line you're going to upgrade like everything else. Everything like the simple iPhone or whatever. I mean, in a sense, the iPhone, it started out as nothing more than a dial phone. If anyone below me in terms of age will they might not even know what a rotary phone is. I mean, it's ancient by comparison. But the rotary phone, you could not have this without having something before it to get to where you get to now. Same with effects. It had to start with something first in order to get to where you are now. And believe me, I mean, the amount of stuff that's been done as far as, let's say, matte paintings, wire removal, pyrotechnics, all these, you would never believe that the stuff that they did back then would get to what we are now. And let me just say that, it's kind of haunting knowing that some of the techniques that were used, especially when I was growing up, they would unfortunately, depends on your point of view, would become obsolete.
Yes.
And this is where
unless there's somebody like Peter Jackson who brought a lot of those old techniques, which were, like you say, obsolete now, back to the forefront, like Lord of the Rings and things of that nature. Now everything, as you can see by the background, I wanted to have a background that represented like special effects in some way. So green screen is a huge part of special effects now.
Yes,
But of
like this
course,
shot from The
yeah,
Matrix.
yes. But green screen and, things of that nature seem to be the new normal, where things that I used to enjoy have now become obsolete. But sometimes I think the more you go into the computer to create a special effects, the more that you're kind of leaving the believability of what filmmaking was.
And this is the rub. This is the thing that comes into play with anything that whatever we loved or kind of had a fondness for, because we say, as you say, the norm, it's becoming just like I say, a legend, a tall tale. It's just something that it's like it was, but it's no longer, viable. And this is where I can say, me personally, and I don't mean to get kind of, you know, saddened by this, but the fact of, like, you know, puppets, or even like makeup effects, or even, like, say, model photography or models in general, all these things. Let me just say with heavy heart that it kind of saddens me that these things are not so used. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're used, but they're not used in a way that it should be, because visual effects, as I said before, is nothing more than a magician's trick. And when you mix both the genre with computers and, the tangible effects,
Mm-hmm.
you get a better balance with things,
Yeah.
because, see, people like Spielberg, James Cameron, even George Lucas, even Michael Bay and Christopher Nolan, they know how to use a balance of techniques in order to
Mm-hmm.
create the world that they would look around themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But
There's two films I'm going to tell you about that came out last year, which for me was a perfect balance of how you can blend in CGI with good effects, with practical effects, like you said, the puppeteering, in mix it in with modern effects. So the one that I thought did it effectively, even though it wasn't the greatest film, but I enjoyed it for the most part, was Beetlejuice. So
mm,
Tim Burton created that movie, and it was a great blend of, he did have CGI, but he also used a lot of practical effects, especially, for example, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a scene with where Lydia has a dream, and she dreams that she gives birth to like a Beetlejuice baby.
mm, okay,
And the baby is a proper puppet, and you see it crawl up the ceiling and that for me blew me away. Like, as you know, in the first Beetlejuice and even in the new one, they used the sandworm.
yes,
They did the same way of animating the sandworm as they did in the original.
see, and that's
So they can still do it. It's just how it the type of what kind of film you're making. And yes, me bad film of 2024 that I feel as if just overshadowed everything, and that was Alien Romulus.
mm-hmm,
So Alien Romulus for me used proper, like, they had even the remote controls.
yes,
All of the face hookers look brilliant. You seen them running around the floor. That was all like puppeteering or mechanical face hookers going around the floor. Then they said they were going to use real suitmation and real puppeteering for the alien. So when you actually got to see the alien, blink and you miss it. There's like maybe 3 or 4 scenes where you had the alien where you could tell it potentially was a puppet or a man in a suit, but the rest was CGI. And I
yeah,
thought because it was badly lit, wasn't very well organized in how it was showcased on screen. For me, the facehugger was the star of that particular movie.
yes, I would have to agree,
And
because yes,
yeah, and then another idea is because the CGI apparently wasn't complete for for when the film was released on its release date. Sorry if you haven't seen it, but I have to mention it, is the CGI of the android that looks like Ian Holmes from the first
Yes.
movie. The CGI wasn't really that great with him. But apparently when it was released on streaming, it's all been completed. So apparently it looks much better.
Okay.
I haven't seen it since I seen it in theatre, so I don't know if that's true. But for me, there's three types of visual effects in one particular film. You had the puppeteering of the face hookers, the suit nation apparently of the alien, which you blink and you miss it, and then really bad CGI.
Yes. No, that's
Where despite Beetlejuice not being the greatest film in terms of the story, I love the special effects because effects really took you back in time. But that's what Tim Burton does.
But see, and you know what? And Tim Burton, he's a very masterful individual when it comes to that of the blending of the techniques, and that's the thing. I'm glad that him and some others take the techniques even they used in the older days and use it to their advantage, because they know that it gives a greater sense of awareness that it's like, yeah, CG is good, but I feel CG should be used more. And I'm not hating on CG. That's not what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
I feel CG, like you mentioned, the Ian Holmes,
Yeah.
Trust me, when I saw that, I was kind of like, you've heard the term uncanny valley, right?
Yeah.
That was the most uncanny valley shot I've ever seen, and I'm just like, I mean, true enough, that picture was, a more low budget in terms of, the budget in terms of the effect. But the thing about it is, it doesn't matter how low budget a film can be. It's all about how do you use the technique. I mean, how well the people who make the effects do what they do. So when you watch that, it's kind of like, y'all kind of refined this a little bit better,
And going back to Beetlejuice, he made the film Alice in Wonderland, which made over $1 billion.
Yeah.
And that was in 2010. Now, he's had a few films out since then, which haven't done as well. Mm-hmm. So Beetlejuice was his biggest grossing film in the box office since 2010. And I generally believe the story wasn't that great, but I think it was a throwback to nostalgia of the 80s and when he brought out Beetlejuice back in that time. The effects and the characters and the actors that were loved that were in that film drove people to theatres. But I think if it was just completely CGI and used the same actors, I don't think it would have made much of an impact. But this one did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because as I said before, the whole purpose of any film in general, is the story, it's the characters. I mean, I mentioned this before on my podcast, that George Lucas said it best, that special effects are not the story. Special effects is never the story. The story is the story, the people who are involved in it, the people that inhabit what you're watching. Special effects are nothing more than a tool in order to enhance what you're talking about. And I feel that that's the thing right there that I think gets overlooked, especially in Hollywood days, is that you're just you're trying to go, because you got to remember, he created Star Wars, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But before that, we had Jaws, which was a technique where it's basically the mechanical shark and everything. But that's a whole story by itself. But I'll just mention this, that it was basically a mechanical shark that was supposed to be realistic in terms of what it was. Unfortunately, they filmed it out in real water, in terms of the real seawater, which is salt, and it kept messing up the mechanics on that particular item. So that's why I say this is a learning curve for some people, and it has to, you know, be where it's like learn from your mistakes so you don't make the same ones twice. Well, with George Lucas, when he created Star Wars, it all was about, like I say, not about the spectacle, because what's the movie basically talking about? Something about good and evil,
Yeah,
and and you're trying to get what the character of Princess Leia, which is getting the battle plans of the Death Star to the rebellion and try to destroy it. That's what it's all about.
by the way, this is not a visual effect. This is a real cat.
That's a real that's a real. Although cats do make a very well. You've seen cats portrayed in films, and sometimes they do good effects with cats, but not that great. Have you ever seen Catwoman with Halle Berry? Probably the worst CGI you'll ever see on the planet, or at least
Yeah.
one of the worst.
The only decent thing about that film is she looked hot in it. Apart from that, it was shit.
That was about it, and that's
Now
the only
another,
visual effect.
but another film that was absolutely garbage and was panned critically for everything, including the effects, was the actual film Cats, which was based on the Lloyd Webber musical. Apparently, it was critically bombed.
Mhm. No, and the funny thing is let me see how much did they spend on this film. They spent almost 200 mil on that film, and it seemed like you would have a more decent effects job with blending motion capture. In fact, if you have that picture where it shows a motion capture person in the regalia of a camera, which is up, yes, that's picture here, which is from Alita Battle Angel.
Yes.
The character has his headset on that's both earphones, but a camera, which is this particular part where it's in front of her face, and these dots all over her face to capture the motion of just wrinkles of kind of expressions or whatever. And the amazing thing about that is that they did the same thing on Cats, but I don't really think they really thought they made an impact in terms of what they were trying to do. Emotionally, because honestly, if the film was emotionally and just something driven, as far as character driven, it might have worked. But see, they were going, and this is the problem with some studios now, is that they feel that if you have a property that is very famous for what it is, and you go off of that and think it's going to make a lot of money, that's where you make the mistake with a lot of things. You instantaneously think that you are going to make millions because it's based on something else. Like this right here, this scene right here, Alita Battle Angel was based on a comic,
Yeah.
and
Well,
and it's,
was this produced by James Cameron?
it was produced by James Cameron. I think maybe co-written, I'm not sure, but it was produced by him and directed by Robert Rodriguez, which I feel, if anyone doesn't know who that is, he's someone who does films on a very low budget, because he knows that you don't need a whole lot of gumption to do effect. I mean, he's done all the Spy Kid films, and those are all, and he knows those things are not, beyond in
Well,
terms of
he knows his audience for those type of movies.
yes. It's all because he knows it's not about the spec, but see, he knows it's all about the story, about the characters, and Alita Battle Angel was no different. I mean, it's actually not a bad film. I just think that it's a property that I feel people tend to think like, oh, we got this film coming out and it's going to be. It doesn't work like that. It's got to be, something that's driven in terms of what the character is bringing to the table and what is being brought to, as far as, is a story even enough for us to watch and say, do we give a damn? You know, I mean, let's in fact let's just break down all the MCU films. You know, all the Marvel films that have come out and that are still coming out. The simple fact is that we can say that just because you have someone who's a man in a suit, you know, you have this demigod, you have someone who is, you know, a super soldier, you have a person who's this, you know, not so much a mad scientist, but he can turn green and, you know, be really bulked up and everything. The simple fact is, yes, you can have all that and they'll look spectacular if it's done right on film, done right in terms of what they're bringing to, you know, the screen. The fact of the matter is the only reason why the MC, at least during the I'm trying to say COVID moments, they had a more strong, you know, storyline in terms of what they were bringing to the picture. I mean, what they're telling the story is. Afterwards, you had some, but some of it started to kind of lag and kind of everything like, well, we're this superpower and we can able to do all these things. You see that most of these MCU films have kind of dwindled, whether it be the shows or the films, and it's just like, I mean, one in particular.
Well, for me, it's not the effects; it's the storytelling.
Yes, it's never about this. It's never about the effects. It's never been about the effects. I mean, when the first Iron Man came out, were you amazed by the flying suit and everything? Yes, but if you notice, it's not focused mostly on that. It's not focused on him being in the suit or whatever. It's showing the man who is kind of pompous, who seemed kind of aristocratic, who seemed just like he's got a, you know, just like he's God's gift to women.
Yeah,
he feels like, you know,
it's not about Iron Man. It's about Tony Stark, the man within the suit.
Right, and you see where he goes from where he was before to a different mindset, and realizes like, I could be more than this. I can be more than this, you know, what I was before. And that's the thing you get driven. That's the thing that captures the people's perception, is that this is a man who, or better yet, who is the man in the suit, you know? And you wonder, it's like, is Tony the suit or is Tony, you know? And that's the thing that you realize the effects in the film. Yes, they are very good, but are we capturing who we're looking at in terms of what the people, I mean, the person that's being portrayed and the characters around them? That's what makes them, that's what makes a good picture. All these things come together where that you're not looking at, you know, the effects, you're looking at who are involved in the picture, the characters in the picture. I mean, as I said before, Steven Spielberg does this very well. Christopher Nolan does a hell of a job doing that. And you know, most of his films are effects laden, but they're not about, because as I say, if you watch his films for the, you know, for the spectacle, then you're missing the point. You know, I mean, I'll give you a good example.
1 second, Jedi. Just wait, I'll let the fucking cat out before I kill it.
Well, he or she's got to be let out, you know, and everything. And while you're doing that, I could just probably show some of the people here some of my magazines, like Cinefex, that deal with, you know, special effects. You know, here's a couple of copies. This one is dealing with talking about Michael Bay's Pearl Harbor. And this one right here is just a retrospect of 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's these films, you know, as I said before, they're effects driven, but they're not. And when I say effects driven, they're heavy in effects, but the story is what you're watching. Like with this one, like I just showed you. Wait a minute, let me show you again. This one here, the cover for Cinefex. This is from AI in artificial intelligence, which is a Spielberg, yes, which is a Spielberg film.
Oh yes, I've only seen that I think once, and despite I can't remember how I felt. I thought it was just an okay film, but the effects and the story I found very interesting within that film.
Yes, and in
Yeah.
fact, let me kind of open. Let me show you a few. Yes, right here. See, this is a miniature set of Rouge City,
Wow.
which was a big. If you see the people compared to the set, it's a big set. You know,
Yes.
it's a beautiful set. But the point I'm making is that yeah, and you're right. You're very right. You're very correct. Um, it's um, it's not a great story, and it's a story. And I should say too, it's a story that the late Stanley Kubrick had a hand in, because
Hmm.
he wanted to do something similar with, doing his story. But Spielberg took what his colleague had in mind and took it upon himself, and not just directed it and produced it, but he actually wrote the screenplay for it. But
Yeah.
the point I'm making is that yes, great effects, and I can tell you firsthand that when I went to go see this film in the theater, that it is, you get caught in the emotion. That's what you're looking at. I mean, yes, you got, like I said, you got great effects in film, but what are you really looking for? And I know for myself, I am someone who hungers more for what is real in sense of human development and mindset, and when you watch
Hmm.
it, it's all about this robot child who's torn between two worlds. And you know it's kind of funny how his world is turned upside down when he learns that he's not real. His love might be, but he's not. And how can he fit into a human society when human society is probably far worse than anything that they build,
Hmm.
because it's almost the Frankenstein motif. You build something, but you think it's going to be, far worse than what you are. But the thing about it is, you're the worst. The human who built it is the worst. So the story is just like that. And that's why I feel when I watch it, I know for me, when I got through watching it, it's crazy as it sounds. This is a time when my mom was still living. I
Hmm.
actually told my mom, it's like, Mom, um, if I never say it, I want to tell you that I love you and appreciate everything that you've done for me. And that's what I got taken away from that film, is that
Yeah.
knowing that this robot child, this artificial intelligent child, love was so great that he went beyond the realm of time and space to just get the appreciated or the love that he wanted from his, real mom. When I say real mom, a human being to a sentient being.
Hmm.
And I know, like I say, when I saw the film, all it did with me was move me to realize like how much I appreciate my mother,
Yes.
and this is how I come up from that. And I, like I say, I don't want to get too emotional, because if I start thinking, I'm going to get teary eyed. But
Hmm.
the point I'm making is that that's the effect of what a film that has a lot of effects in it is supposed to do. It's supposed to enhance what the story is being told. And that film was no different than anything that, like I say, Michael Bay or believe it or not, even Quentin Tarantino has done. He's used
Yes.
effects in his films,
Yeah.
but
Sometimes when it comes to filmmaking, you could have a basic plot, but about a lesson or things that you want the human, emotions or the human within us to learn. So whether it's dealing with love, whether it's dealing with loss, whether it's dealing with jealousy, anger, anything good versus evil, you can make any story about the things that drive us as human beings.
yes,
But when you tell a story, whether it's a horror story, a sci-fi story, a kaiju movie, a futuristic movie, an apocalyptic movie, whatever it is, and you're trying to tell a simple story, like I say, about love, jealousy, anger, grief, forgiveness, whatever it is, you use these tools around us to
Yes.
enhance that story. And some directors can do it effectively, some fail miserably at it. A young actor, well, not young actor, sorry, a young director who I think is doing an incredible job. He's only had 4 films that we know of that, under his belt, but he seems to take time with whatever he chooses to do, and that's Gareth Edwards.
Yes. A brilliant
So
example. Yes.
yeah, so Gareth Edwards created Monsters, which got him noticed. It was an independent movie. So that was like a sci-fi movie with these creatures that come to Earth, and there's like parts of the planet that are like in a quarantine zone, and you've got these 2 individuals that need to cross the quarantine zone with these creatures in it to get home.
Yes.
And so you think, oh, great sci-fi film, but if you actually watch the movie, it's not really about the monster aliens. It's about these 2 individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Then his next big break was Godzilla 2014, which of course spawned the MonsterVerse. It's had a bit of a change up in terms of its style and its storytelling since that one. That was probably the most grounded of all the movies in the MonsterVerse. Then he hit the big one with Rogue One Star Wars,
Yes.
which everybody I know says Rogue One is the best Star Wars film since the original trilogy.
And I would have to agree with that. Yes.
And it's because it's not about the spectacle or the Jedi's versus the Sith, good versus evil. It's about the characters and a group of rebels. Then the next film he made after that was The Creator,
Yes.
which you and I have both went to see it in theaters, and I had similar feelings to like with that what I did with EI, where it was an okay story with an amazing visuals, but he was trying to teach us things about ourselves as human beings rather than the androids or the artificial intelligence involved in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you say, great storytelling, a great director, and his next entry is the latest in the Jurassic Park franchise, or should I say, the Jurassic World. And out of all of the Jurassic World films, from the first one that came out in 2017, this is probably the second one I've been the most excited for.
Me too. And I feel that Garrett, he really does have a hold or got a niche on how you tell a story, a good story. I mean, you're dealing with, especially with that. He's dealt with the materials that he's done with, like with Godzilla or Star Wars, and of course this one here with Jurassic World with dinosaurs. The thing about it is that he's making it his own, and he knows that yes, I've got the spectacle, but hopefully you get what the story is going to be, which is going to be just as a spectacle as what the story is being brought to light. I mean, I feel that that's something he's one of the few who actually has a touch on that. I mean, because like I say, the directors I mentioned before, they not so much try, but they capitalize on saying, what am I bringing to the forefront in terms of telling a story? You're telling the story of people who are interacting with one another, and hopefully what you're seeing is that you come away with, oh, that's what the story is about with these characters, and it's like, oh, that's what's going on in the background, and you don't get lost in the spectacle, because once you get lost in the spectacle, I guarantee you will realize, like, was that even worth my time watching? I gave you a great example. When I took my mom and myself to go see one of the Pierce Brosnan Bond films, which was Tomorrow Never Dies.
Mhm.
I'm expecting, it would be a pretty good film. And the previous film he did was GoldenEye, and I thought it was much better than Tomorrow Never Dies. When I went into watching that, I was kind of like, they got some spectacles, but at the same time, it's like it's the same, trope with Bond. He's a womanizer. He's trying to take out whoever does whatever they're trying to start, a war or whatever. And it's just like I came out the film kind of feeling, man. That's. I mean, that's. See, when you come out of a film that has something spectacular, but you come out leaving like, wow, that was the worst. That wasn't worth my time. It's that tells you that someone didn't focus on the story. They didn't focus on the characters much, because incredible as it sounds, his last Bond film, which was Die Another Day, crazy as it sounds, that's my favorite. That's my favorite Pierce Brosnan Bond film. Only because not because you got so much great spectacle, but you got great, characters that are doing something. You got a good story where, because it took me for a loop when you find out who really is who in the story, and I was kind of like, wow, that's like I say, that's what I'm talking. This is what I'm talking about. Yes, you had some great miniature effects in there. You got some great. Yes, CG was a little off, but you're not thinking about that. You're thinking about what the storyline and where the characters is going. And that's the problem with some things. And this is one of the reasons why I say Hollywood is producing more shit than usual. I mean, you do usually have certain diamonds in the rough, but there's too focused on damn spectacle, man. I mean, it's like the spectacle is not supposed to be that. You're supposed to be looking at the story. Like when we were discussing Sinners.
Yes.
Sinners is a good example of it has effects in there. That has effects. We see the effects in there. Okay. We see Michael J.
Most of the effects in that, though, there's obviously it does feature vampires, so you do see vampire effects. You see like effects of stuff, but a lot of it effects in that is more like camera visuals and camera trickery than it, with the added maybe effect.
Exactly. With Michael B. Jordan playing two characters at the same time. And and I should mention, in that film, that's a technique that's old as Hollywood is. When a single actor plays two characters at the same time. And the thing about this is that where you see the motion of the camera moving from different points, you could not do that back in the day. Back in the day, it was like where we're at right now, where you're on one side of the screen, I'm on the other. That's how they would match the two films of the actor in the same frame playing a different role. Here, you had the actor playing two different roles. They filmed at one point in time, then they did it another, but it was all motion track on a computerized dolly to capture that action. And the interaction is that you had someone. This is another example where I was talking about how they taken a technique and just took it tenfold, where you had some who was a body double that could interact with Michael B. Jordan on set, but at the same time, that interaction would be, done again with another with the same body double person, and they just took the place on the other side of him doing the same kind of motion. And getting back to the story of Sinners, it has effects in there, yes, and that's an obvious effect. Two Michael B. Jordan people in there and everything. We see that. Are you looking at that as far as being that attracts you? No, you're looking at the time that the story takes place. You're looking at what's going on that's being taken place in terms of these two brothers are trying to open up a juke joint, trying to, and you got to remember, this is during a time where segregation was very thick, all these things, and people who were mixed, when I say mixed, you know what I'm talking about. When they're that, it's a confliction on themselves, and two people will be thinking like, "Oh, you're not black, you're white, you're this," and it's like it's such a. But in the end, what you watch it is, and vampires are just an added dose of what we're looking at, bringing out what is being brought to the table in this film. And like I say, the effects in there, very simple, but very effective because it helps to draw out what we're watching. Yeah, you have a little CG like somewhere at the beginning. You have a little CG at the end. What happens at the end with some of the vampires. But what you take from the film? You're taking from the fact that there's the main character who's divided by what he loves, which is to play music, and what his religion is. Because we know that in the end, and spoilers if anyone's never seen Sinners yet, the fact of the matter is he chooses that over what his father has taught him in terms of religion, and how that's haunting in terms of the price he has to pay for that. And that's what you take away from sin. Or like I said, and I'll put it like this: anyone can watch a certain film and take away from that. It's just like The Matrix. You could take away from that whatever, about a million things from that, but the end result is you probably wouldn't be wrong with what you take away from. Sinners is no different. You can take away from anything from that, and that's what you get out of that. So that's what the thing about that with films like that. You're using effects to enhance what the story, well, with the director, the artist. I like to call directors who are really good at this, artists, make the story that you're seeing, and that's what it's all about. You're trying to enhance the story there.
Going back to James Bond, what about this, Walter?
Yes. Now this is this is a brilliant moment right here. This is from Skyfall. This is behind the scenes moment in Skyfall. It's during the end of the film where the main character, played by, I can't remember what his name is, but he's after not just Bond, but he's after M. He's trying to kill her because she pretty much left him for dead. Which, if you think about the so-called spy game, it's either kill or be killed, and he's hold this grudge for her with what she did to him over the past 30 years. And I was just like, okay, you got this grudge. Okay, fine, whatever. Well, that moment there, it's a thing where Bond has to confront his past with M in order to evade, the character that's after them. So in that moment, he goes back to his home place where he grew up, which is called Skyfall. I mean, coincidentally called the name of the film too. But anyone who saw the film, it's a brilliant film. And the story is so good. I love the story of Skyfall. I mean, I love it more than Casino Royale with him in that film, even though I think that's a brilliant film also. I think that's a very brilliant film also. The thing about it is, it's a Bond film, yes, but it's a very, very character-driven film because one character is trying to kill the other while the other one's trying to figure out what he's trying to do and trying to protect the other. Well, in that moment, when getting back to that, a shot where the helicopter goes into the house, it's a moment where Bond tricks the character, the villain, and he thinks he's inside the house, and he sets up some explosive that throws, debris, shrapnel at the helicopter pilot, and it, disorients him and everything. And what you saw right there was nothing more than a pyrotechnic shot where it's cable driven. It's on its gimbal, and if you see that, that's another example of a bigature. It's a big ass miniature because yes, you see the person on the far right making some detail to the house, and you see how big this thing is. This is a big. This is another magician's trick. If you know what the size of a house, which this house is pretty big, it's bigger than yours or mine in comparison. But if you notice how big the helicopter miniature is, it's huge. It's huge as hell. It gives you the idea of how the magician's trick is very well done here. And when this helicopter, you know, you know, hits the house, it explodes. But then all of a sudden, the whole thing just blows up in a, just a boom, massive, explosion. Which was I love. I might have to put that on one of my best top explosions too. If I do when I do another one, because the explosion one it's just brilliant. But the thing is, you get the spectacle, but you don't lose what you're watching which is how Bond thwarts the villain's idea and plans in trying to kill him. That's the thing, And it's like I say, the story is so brilliant. It's probably one of the better Bond films that I've seen in terms of the darkness, the ferocity, the just showing that you don't need a whole lot of gadgets. I mean, like I say, the past Bonds with Connery, Moore, and even Dalton, they had, even though Dalton is more, he has more that kind of savagery that Daniel Craig has in his Bond films and everything. But you see that it's all about the character, all about the story. And like as I mentioned before, all the Bond films, they all had, incredible spectacles. They all had, amazing, moments. But what do you take away from it? You take away with knowing that if it has a good story, that's what you left with. And I know for myself, I've seen all the Bond films, and you have some that are, hit and miss. Some are better than others. And I'm pretty sure, like any Godzilla film, you have your favorites and you have ones that are like not so good as the other one. But that's what you take away from it. And Skyfall is no different in terms of telling a good story with using incredible effects like that, miniature effects. Right there, it has miniature effects, but it also has some CG effects, which I have to say are not that bad. There actually are some good CG effects in there. But you're not looking at that. You're looking at what is being used with the effects that drives home the narrative in the story. And when you see that moment right there where that helicopter hits the house, it blows up and then takes the whole house with it, that to me is what you get out of in terms of making a good story, because you're enhancing that moment. And that's with any movie that you do. You're enhancing the moment for what the characters are doing in that particular arena. It's funny how. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and since you did mention Godzilla, we'll have to show this one as well.
Yes, please, yes. And the funny thing is, this is a good example of a director, no, artist. I have to say artiste, who did -1. And this is just a maquette of or more of a rendering aspect of what Godzilla will be in CG. And this is from Godzilla -1. And this is a perfect example. See, this is the CG version of him. And this is a perfect example of what I was mentioning about blending or taking certain, ideas or whatever, as far as, bringing it to the table in terms of, making the effects enhance what you have in the moment, and making it where it's like, wow, it's like, there was a Godzilla film. That was a Godzilla film there. Because if anybody who's watched -1, let's be honest. Yes, we got a good Godzilla in here. We do. And the effects are pretty much very well done, because they won an Oscar. It went up against other, behemoth effects that year. And I won't go into the politics of that, but I'm not gonna say nothing. The simple fact is that has got to be one of the most character-driven, most emotional, most intensified Godzilla films that I've ever watched. in my 50 some years, because like I say, I saw the original Godzilla. I mean, I love the original Godzilla. I mean, I don't think anyone has not liked the original Godzilla, and it emoted much, you know, like feels and emotions with some people. And as much as I enjoyed the film for that and everything, and what it was bringing, because what Shiro Honda was trying to say, how nuclear power can be the death of us, and Godzilla was just a representation of that. Well, with minus one, it takes a little bit further. You still have that aspect of it, but at the same time, the effects enhance the fact that the people who are living in this world, living in this particular post, World War II, you see that they're rebuilding themselves, you're rebuilding their lives, but then you have it wrecked again by Godzilla. And then you see all these emotions sprawled out. And let me just say, I'm not afraid to admit it, because when I watched this film, I was like, I'm crying in this movie, because you're not looking, as I said again, you're not getting the so-called, spectacle of, just Godzilla and what he can do. I mean, you have that, but you get this sense of loss. You get this sense of dread. You get this sense of, it's like, can I move on? Can I be available? You get all this like gut-wrenching of, that's what's amazing about this film. The gut-wrenching effect of this film is the emotion. It like literally just crawls inside of you and just like releases it. And I can say for firsthand that you can't not watch this film and not get some sense of, just, oh wow, this is what's happening here. And this is why this artist who directed this and was the visual effects of supervisors on it too. This is why I know that he was looking at story. It's about story, because, like you say, all the other Godzilla films, whether it be the MonsterVerse ones,
makes me laugh. It makes me laugh as well that you get Marvel, for example. Mm-hmm. They've got a whole team of visual effect artists. There'll be maybe 100 visual effects artists that'll work on a film.
Mm-hmm.
Minus one had 11 people.
Say, what does that tell you? Say, that's the thing. This is the thing I realize, because I've always wondered, because the effects company that I have right here, I mentioned, they have abundance of people in their corner, but the thing about it is, they don't have as much as when I say don't have as much, they have the people who focus on what they bring in terms of telling the story and telling the effects wise, and do it that way. And as you say, all these other films, like especially in Western films, they got like maybe 5,000 working on as far as effects. Minus one, yes, less than 15, and that should tell
11.
You, well, and then 11, and that should tell you right.
Because if you've ever seen the clip of when it was announced that it was up for an Oscar for visual effects, mm-hmm. The director was in the room with the team, and he showed them the clip that they'd been nominated, and they all jump up happy, and they all.
Yes.
If you remember when they won the effect, when they were on the stage, every single person who was on that stage was the people that worked on the effects, and there was only 11 people on the stage. So what does that tell you? It's crazy.
That's crazy, but it shows right there that you are putting the heart and mind of the people who are doing the effects. They're putting their blood, sweat, and tears into that, where you have abundance of other people doing it. It's like it's not and that's the thing. That's what, as I say, it gets lost sometimes. It's not about the effect. It's about what you capture in terms of tone and emotion, and what is being brought to what enhances what the characters are dealing with, And minus one, I can say firsthand that I hope that when the director when he makes the sequel, he does bring the same gravitas to the sequel and not allow, the success go to his head, because that's the problem with, certain artists, that they make a film, it does well, it's given a great criticism from our audiences and critics alike. But if they allow that mentality of what they've done, that success go to their heads, it can damage what they might do next. And that's where I feel they might get lost in thinking, well, when we did this, we can do another and it's going to have more effects. We're going to do all. It's like, then you just you lost right there. You just wounded yourself and crippled yourself right there. You lost what you had intention before, and it's become Achilles' heel to you, because you think because you did great, it's supposed to do just as great when you do another, but you say it's gonna be more than that. It's like, that's you lost yourself.
He has said that he is gonna get a much bigger budget than the first movie, which I think, you can have a film that gets a bigger budget and it's gonna have more effects, more battles, more, obviously, the ante from the film. Doesn't mean you still take away from the story.
Right. And see, I'll give you a great example of this. If you watched Nolan's Batman trilogy, now the first one, which was Batman Begins, it's an all right film. I mean, I enjoyed it for what it is, and it has certain effects in there. It has good stunt work, but it's a good character driven story. It's a very good character driven story. But the next one, The Dark Knight, which, let's be honest, had a bigger budget, but that didn't mean that Dolan was going to splurge on story. He upped the story so much that it's one of the reasons why I feel it's one of the best, or probably the top in superhero films, because it really shows that there's more to, special effects. No, that's what I'm saying. There's more to story.
Yeah. I feel as if Nolan's one of them directors that he knows how to work the budget well, so he knows how to use it on story, effects, costume, cast, production. Same with Gareth Edwards.
Yes, because if you notice, I mean, they like I say, if you notice, if you even, I felt like this when you watched The Dark Knight, do you really see anything as far as special effects in terms of maybe a few pyrotechnics or whatever? Do you really see anything in there that screams out special effects? Do you see anything?
I think in The Dark Knight, it's Two-Face's face.
Okay.
That the scene where Joker goes to the hospital and the hospital gets blown up.
Okay.
The scene where anything to do with the bat tank that goes around the city. We were in Chicago, and there's that scene with the bank and the truck gets lifted up on the bank.
Yes.
For me, and I think the next movie, The Dark Knight Rises, would have had more special effects, because don't forget, Bane captures and keeps the whole city hostage. And you see, that amazing effect where he blows up the football stadium. So there is some CGI, but the majority is for the big moments. The rest, which is normally in the middle or near the end of the film, the rest is all story driven.
And this is where we come back to story, because, like I say, story wise, what is the Joker's main objective in The Dark Knight? Basically, just say, I'm just bringing chaos to life, and I want you to experience it firsthand and know that you can't escape it without doing something really trivial, And Batman has to be put in a corner to say, stop him. Whereas the Dark Knight Rises is the same motif. He's got to stop Bane, but Batman has to, quote unquote, get himself out of this hole which he's been in for a while, which is like, can I be the savior of the city, but also keep who I am, which is Bruce Wayne. Or Bruce Wayne. I don't know why I came up with that, but that's the thing right there. It's and like I say, the Dark Knight, the Dark Knight, all those things you see it because they were all done practically. They were all done practically, but in between, you and like I say, with the Two-Face, dense face. That's literally the most they did in as far as CG, because that wasn't makeup. That was digital makeup. All the other stuff was either done with stunt work. There's like maybe a twitch of miniature effects in there. It's kind of like what you said. You blink and you miss it, and it's in there, but it's not about seeing that. You're seeing the story be enhanced by the effects.
Like Heath Ledger's Joker, the face makeup, like the practical effects to create his scarred smile, all practical effects using puppet, well, not puppetry, but you know what I mean, using makeup effect, yeah.
And see, that's the thing that I love, knowing that all these things, as I say, Nolan knows how to use certain techniques, because he likes to do a lot of things practically. He doesn't like to do a lot of things with CG. He has used CG, especially when he did Inception. He had to do stuff in there CG wise, but the film is done majority practically. It's done where everything is like twisted upside down, rolling over. That's an old technique where the I don't know if you ever seen that Fred Astaire film where he's dancing on the ceiling, on the walls and everything. That's an effect that's used in that film in order for a moment where characters are, having to run up off the walls, on the floor and everything. All that, it's just an old technique, just pretty much enhanced, but you have the technique of CG to kind of, digitally correct or take out what does need to be there, because some of that was done with wires and everything. You can easily take out the wires. And like I say, a lot of that, like especially with the scene where Paris's moment folds upon itself because they're in a dream state. Of course, that's practically CG, but some of that is, just a trick photography of showing the flip side of the city on its end. That's all that is, Nolan knows how to use the effect brilliantly in order to tell the story. And like I say, the stuff that he's done from, Interstellar to recently Oppenheimer, he uses effects where it's all about, because like I say, all his films are pretty much character driven. There's some CG, there's mostly model photography, but the thing about it is he doesn't take away from what the story is.
Yes.
And again, that's why I say, again, I wish more people would take a hint that if someone has something original in terms of story and it needs visual effects, give them techniques so they can do that. And hopefully that the effect that they get out of it is that you leave the theater liking the film for what it is, because effects enhance the story,
Yes. Well, with that said, Walter, I think you've done a brilliant job.
Well,
you've not disappointed.
I'm surprised I was able to talk this long, but then again, I've had so much in me to express. It's going to be there. Yes.
Well, I generally feel you've taught me a lot about special effects. We've talked about the history, with where it's begun, how it's progressed, and yes, it's progressed. It's nice to see technology grow, but sometimes it's nice to go back to the past.
Yes, because the past is how you get to the future in the first place. Because let's be honest, we would, like I say, we wouldn't get here. We wouldn't be here if we didn't get had this starting point. It's that old motif of what came first, the chicken or the egg. And we know that the egg came. The chicken started out as an egg and then progressed to be what it is. And that's what effects are. Well, like anything, really. in this world.
So yeah, so we went from this
Mhm.
back in the day to this.
Yes. And to me,
But
I
that,
think that's a smooth transition in a way.
yes, but that's the best of the best when I show -1.
Mhm. So where
So
we go from
Mr.
here, we don't know.
Well, James Cameron, he's really at the forefront. He started off as an amazing film director with great visuals, but I feel as if he wants to now be remembered not just for his filmmaking, but for his contribution to special effects with all these green screen, blue screen, fucking these blue little men that run around trees and that. And now with obviously Where the Water, he's using water effects,
Mhm.
but that's for another conversation.
Right.
But Mr. Jedi Grand Velle, you have been amazing. I've loved listening to your conversation. I love everything that you've delivered tonight. I'm going to take away from this conversation a lot of great knowledge.
Well, I thank you for having me, and
Yeah.
I'm hoping that it didn't discourage you from what I was talking about, because, like I say, it's
No.
so much.
Yeah, no, not at all. It's give me a lot to think about. I too, like yourself, have got like the making of movies. I've got the Dark Knight ones down there. I've got all the MonsterVerse ones. I've got the Aliens one,
Mm-hmm.
and I keep looking out for other books for films that I enjoy.
Right.
But since we're talking about Jedi Grand Velle, what is coming up on your channel?
Well, tomorrow I will be getting with DJ Anubis, and we are going to be discussing. It'll be a recording where we're going to be discussing a topic that I feel is, to its point, kind of overlooked, but it's there, but it's just has to be talked about, which is female werewolves and how they have some effect in our visual, mindset. Because I feel that they need to be talked about just as much as their brethren, their male counterparts in terms of werewolves, like us. And the next Saturday, I will be discussing the Mission Impossible films. I'll be doing a review. It's kind of a review slash, kind of retro look at all the Tom Cruise Mission Impossible films, because I never imagined that this guy would have done these many films in the time allotted him, because it's nearly 30 years of Mission Impossible films.
I'm just more impressed he hadn't died making one.
He's come close. I mean, he sprained his ankle. He's almost, yeah. It's like, I don't see how he's doing, and he still looks great for his age. I mean, he's in his 60s and doesn't look like a day older than 40.
And I can't see him slowing down. He might have stopped doing Mission Impossible film, but I still think he'll make the odd action flick. Whether he goes to the extreme he did for Mission Impossible is another question.
Right. I mean, if he's still doing it when he's still doing it when he's 80, I was like, that's pretty impressive, dude.
But who knows? You never know. This last film is meant to be the last one with him, so he may pass the torch on to somebody else.
Possibly.
But Walter, that's been amazing. I've had a great time. As for me in the entertainment headquarters, I will be releasing the next Into the Darkness franchise discussion, which is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which was a great discussion earlier today with DJ Anubis and Anthony Jordan. I also have coming on the channel the next Retro Classic Movie Show, which will be next Thursday, which will be a special. It'll be me, my co-host DJ Anubis, potentially Sci-Fi Century, talking about the first 4 Karate Kid films. And then on the 16th, I have another education. This one is with Mr. Daniel Miller, aka the Professor, and we're going to be talking about the Thunderbirds. So looking forward to that. And there is one other event coming on the channel, which I think it's the 18th, and it is Television Chronicles, my show dedicated to shows on television and streaming. And me and Mr. Tony the Dead are going to be talking about the first season of The Terror.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes,
Nice.
so got a few things planned before. Guess what? Me and my friend Mr. Jedi Grand Velle jet off to good old San Diego
Yes, sir.
for
My
a bit
first
of
time, Joey.
yes, the first vacay, and I think we need it.
Yes, yes, we do. Much so.
Yes. But this has been a blast, Jedi. Thank you so much. It means the world to me. You've done this with me today. I'm glad you could make it. I'm glad, you've given us a lot to talk about and think about, especially with visual effects, but also more so storytelling and how much importance it is with
Yes.
the go side to side with the visuals. So, with that said, from me and from Mr. Jedi Grand Velle, we wish you all a good night, and we'll catch you all at the next one. Take care, everybody.
Peace.